Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the Psych coach, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to manage an anxious attachment style. We all have different attachment styles, typically one of 4. And for those of you with an attachment style that is anxious, it can be really useful to have an idea of how to manage it in relationships in order for you to feel as secure and happy as possible in them. Attachment styles play out in friendships, and they also play out with work colleagues and romantic relationships. Attachment styles can be triggered by the person you're with. If you're more of an anxious attachment style, then being with someone who is avoidant may trigger that attachment style more than if you're with someone who is secure, for example. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on knowing how to manage your anxious attachment style, with the view that if you're able to do that, you will feel more secure, happier in your relationships, and you will flourish as a result of that. Tip number 1 is not to confuse anxiety with connection. If you're in the realms of dating, for example, and you meet someone and your attachment system is being really triggered and you're getting very anxious, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a very profound, meaningful connection that's taking place. It could simply mean that you're just feeling quite anxious and your attachment system is being activated. It's something to look out for, because it can often be the case that if you're feeling like you're really anxious, you may assume that that is a sign of a deep connection. It isn't. It is simply your attachment style and your anxiety being activated. And that's fine, but see it for what it is. That's your anxiety. It's not a sign that this is the one and this is a really deep and meaningful connection. Tip number 2 is to have boundaries. If you have an anxious attachment style, there is a chance you may be less boundaried in order to try and accommodate the other person, in order to try and ensure that their needs are met so they stick around for longer. That can lead to less boundaries and you at times accepting things that you wouldn't normally. Being boundaried is really important because it very healthily asserts, this is what I'm okay with, this isn't what I'm okay with. So don't end up in a relationship or indeed a friendship where there are less boundaries because you're worried about the impact that will have on the other person. Be boundaried, have your needs met, and trust that if the person is right for you, if the friendship is right for you, they will respect those boundaries. Healthy relationships are made of boundaries. If a relationship doesn't have boundaries, it's not a healthy one. And chances are, if you don't have boundaries, you will eventually become resentful. So absolutely put boundaries in place and stick to them. Tip number 3 is to assert your needs. Some people will simply own the fact that they have an anxious attachment style and they appreciate a bit of daily contact. Now, I know that in the early days of dating, that might seem like a really difficult thing to say, but as you get more comfortable in it, it is perfectly fine to assert your needs. Your needs are valid in a relationship. If you need a bit more frequent communication, if you want to know when you're next seeing the person, it's fine to ask for that. Now, I don't mean suddenly, whip out your diaries and get the person to commit to a date every day for the next year. But what I do mean is be open about what you need. That you need an extra bit of communication, that you would like to know when you're seeing the person next, when your date finishes. It's perfectly reasonable. In friendships, you can be open about your needs, that you want to have a monthly meetup, that you want to have a weekly catch-up, whatever it may be. Assert your needs, because doing that reinforces the fact my needs are valuable. I don't constantly need to accommodate other people's needs and neglect my own. And it also reinforces this idea that if the person is right for you, if the friendship is right for you, they will hear that and respond appropriately. Might not necessarily say, sure, I'll meet all those needs, but they'll be open to a dialogue about it and seeing how you can at least get to a point where you're meeting halfway about each person's mutual needs being respected. But do not negate your needs. Tip number 4, if you have an anxious attachment style, is to not make excuses for someone's behaviour. If you have an anxious attachment style, as I mentioned earlier, there's a chance you will be overly accommodating of someone else in order for them not to trigger your attachment system to get very anxious and for them to leave. But that can mean you accepting behaviour that isn't appropriate. Making excuses for someone who's continually late, who continually cancels, who doesn't follow up on calling when they say they will, who doesn't bother texting you for days on end. It's not okay. And it's certainly not what you're looking for if you've got an anxious attachment style. You need something more than that. Fine, if you need to make excuses as a one-off, sure, we all do. But if you find yourself continually making excuses and trying to find a plausible reason for poor behaviour, listen to that. Because it would suggest to me that all is not well and you know deep down you're tolerating behaviours that you shouldn't. So really look out for making excuses for someone. And tip number 5 is try to date people who are secure. That, of course, is in the realms of relationships. It's not in the realms of friendship. But if you are dating and you're looking for a relationship with an anxious attachment style, you are best going to be served to someone who is secure. Someone who's got a secure attachment is able to communicate their needs. They don't tend to play games and not respond. They tend to be able to commit to when they're going to see you. They tend to be able to be more open about their feelings. And dating someone who's secure is more likely to give you what you're looking for than dating someone who is avoidant and not prepared to commit and not prepared to look at dates in the diary for another meetup and not prepared to communicate with you very often and maybe not even prepared to move in or settle down or call you boyfriend or girlfriend or marry, whatever it is you're looking for. So if possible, try and look for people who are secure. If you've enjoyed today's tips, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll give you plenty more tips on how you can use psychology on a day-to-day basis.